So for as long as I can remember, I have had a love affair with hockey. And it all started with my cousin Toby, who was the captain of his college hockey team near my hometown. And since he was so close by, he would often come to our house for a weekend and share meals with us. One of his favorite tricks at the table was to unceremoniously flip out his front teeth and put them next to his plate and wait for someone to notice. And then he would smile this huge, toothless grin before my mom would yell at him to behave himself. You see, back then, never mind that there were no mouth guards or cages, they didn't even wear helmets. To 4-year-old me sitting at the table with Toby, it was like having breakfast with Superman. But the hero worship didn't spring up at our table. It came from watching that same toothless Toby actually play, screaming back and forth on the ice, slamming opponents into the boards, his near-perfect slap shots, the roar of the crowd. We became such fans that long after Toby graduated, we still shared season tickets with our neighbors and would vie for the best nights to go to the rink. My Millie Hype status continued as I went off to boarding school and college, both with institutionally legend hockey teams. I would attend as many games as possible, especially in college, because it was our main form of entertainment. By then, girls and women's teams were just gaining traction, but I was way too intimidated to even consider donning hockey skates and taking to a rink myself. Skating for me has always been a great joy, but with figure skates and on backwoods ponds where I didn't have to stop or defend myself, except against my little brother who constantly tried to knock me down. Well, fast forward to my professional life as a teacher. I had to take a break from my career as a fan initially because my first job was in Southern California. And although the LA Kings were already in its second decade, I was hanging out with this surfer cowboy dude. And the closest thing he ever voluntarily got near ice was in a cooler on the beach or when he would go to his grandparents in North Dakota for Christmas. But the planets aligned, and our next teaching jobs, spoiler alert, I married the surfer dude, were in Minnesota. And I taught at a boys' Catholic school whose hockey team always made it into the state tournament. And the great thing about the Twin Cities is that they would close school so that we could all go to the Civic Center in St. Paul to watch the playoffs. It wasn't until we moved to Millbrook, and God knows how Mr. Hardy ever considered coming to yet another ice-laden climate, that I got up the courage to even consider making the conversion to hockey skates. Our first home was in Abbott, in what is now the Doors family apartment. But back then, there was no math and science center, and the open-air hockey rink was where the zoo parking lot is right now. Late into the night, we could hear whistles and pucks against the boards. I had a much more romantic view of the opening of the rink than Mr. Hardy did, for sure, in part because not only could I bring my daughters down to skate again, but we could also go to the games. But the reason why we would hear pucks at night was not because there were multiple teams who had to share the ice. We only had one team, the boys' varsity, coached by Mr. Feidelson and Mr. McKenzie. And they had the whole afternoon to practice. The night shift was for what was called the bomb squad. This was a group of students who weren't on varsity team, but wanted to play. Some had never skated before, and some were just shy of making the varsity squad, and some were girls, and some were faculty, and some were women faculty. Ms. Havard, along with Cousin Toby, is a member of my Hockey Hall of Fame. She was on the bomb squad. She gave me courage. I didn't join the bomb squad then for a practical reason. I had just had my first child and I didn't have the time. But as Millbrook grew and our hockey program introduced JV and a girls' team, the bomb squad disappeared. But our desire to play did not, and my moment arrived. Miss Havard and a few other women colleagues made the inspired decision to create the Millbrook Chicks with Sticks franchise, and I was drafted, along with anyone else who was willing to put on the gear and put sticks in their hands. And that's when I bought my first pair of hockey skates. Yet even with all of those years in the stands and on the ice with my little figure skates on those backwood ponds, I had absolutely no clue what I was supposed to do with my feet, with my hands, with my equipment. I was at ground zero at our first practice, and I loved it. I could not stop smiling. Even when our ringers like Mr. Feidelson and Mr. and Mrs. McKenzie and Coach Jay Pecchia would skate circles around me at what seemed the speed of light, I still laughed and I loved it. It was serious fun. What I mean by this is that we did actually want to play and want to learn and improve, and we wanted to compete. But we were an amazing combination of seriously good athletes, coaches even, and folks like me. What we shared in common was mutual respect, humility, and joy for who we were without any pretense and without any pressure. That was what made the magic happen, what made me have the courage to actually put on hockey skates. I even took a skating clinic at our rink with mites and peewees and midgets, 40-year-old me learning to deal with edges and stops with a bunch of 10-year-olds. I even scored the winning goal one year for our team when we played the girls' varsity. And one of my shining moments of my Millbrook career in 2018 was when I was courageous enough to get back on the ice years after the Chicks with Sticks dissolved to be an assistant coach for the JV girls. This wasn't just because I have a love affair with hockey. It was because I would be part of the magic again. Part of that sweet spot of mutual respect, humility, and joy that the girls and the head coach, Ms. Goodwin, brought to the ice. Ms. Goodwin from Alberta, who probably should have played for Team Canada, and some like me, who was and am still relearning what to do with my feet. Even though I miss coaching, and I bow in great respect for Coach Pat and Coach Driscoll and the whole JV squad, I know I am still part of the magic, because we all are. If you want to know what really makes Millbrook Millbrook, join in something you didn't think you could join. Join with heart, whether it's a JV or third squad, or a theater production, or even a class that you thought you didn't want to take. At the very least, go watch some girls' JV puck and reap some joy and respect and humility of your own. Thank you.